Hello viewers, it's time for the final round of the Manufacturers' Cup. We have ourselves an entertaining 20 lap race around Suzuka. Now if we take a look at the scores throughout this season, I've had a fairly mixed season. Some good scores like the second place in the Nürburgring round 1, but round 4 was a big disaster. So today's race is my last chance to try to secure a good amount of points and try to get in the top 100 in Europe. Yes, so we have some clear aims heading into this first race. Taking a look at the points table, 312 points for a win. I've not yet scored that many points in a race this season, but let's see as we head into qualifying. Now my aim was at least to get a sub 2 minutes, which I managed to do with a 59.7. But I think a mid or a low 59 was possible, and so we jump back into the pit lane, gather ourselves a fresh set of tyres before trying to improve. I was 2/10 away from pole at this time, but sat in 7th, which wouldn't be too bad. Qualifying's definitely been my weakness in this season. So let's see how this one goes. Rudegna 2, someone off the track there. Come on, slow improvement. Another small improvement through the second sector. Through the third one, again, another small improvement. 1/10 up, heading through 130R into the final chicane, which seemed to be quite a strong sequence of corners for this car, actually. And I would say that Suzuka in general seemed to be quite a good circuit for the AMG Mercedes, which we are of course driving. Heading to the line, it was going to be a small saving of a few tenths, a 59.5, a tenth and a half off. And that put me third on the grid, which is about as high as I've been all season. Now let's recap this race, because it took a couple of laps to really get settled in. You can see the leader has actually pulled clear quite quickly. That's of course because of this strategy. You have to use the soft and the medium in the race. Most of us opting for the medium at the beginning. I think the leader going on to the soft, as he is there, going into the pit lane at the end of lap 8, and would therefore have a slower second stint. Whereas myself and the GTR here, both on the mediums, going well beyond halfway into the race before changing. Now I was a little bit impatient here. I sensed that I had a good opportunity to go for the lead. And this is a good example of perhaps not playing the long game enough, because as we head down turn 1, or towards turn 1, I looked for the inside in a move that wasn't really on. I was hoping he would move more to the left. It didn't happen, and upon reflection that was much more my fault, as we lose a good couple of seconds as a result of that fighting. Our laps were normally 2:01s, but this one was going to be a couple of seconds slower than that, with a 2:04, 2:05. At the end of lap 12, heading into the pit lane, then going onto the soft tyre. The Mercedes boys doing a fantastic job as ever, and as I exit the pit lane, I actually moved down to 4th, but with a good set of fresh tyres I can push here and try to catch up with the cars in front. First of which was the Renault, which was on pretty worn tyres by this point, a bit of contact from behind. I needed to really dispatch this guy as quick as possible to try and catch up with the top 2, and thankfully the space did afford itself, and I moved back to 3rd with quite a bit of a gap to 1st and 2nd, as you can tell, 7 seconds. By lap 19 though, you can see that gap got very quickly whittled down. I had a huge tyre advantage as these guys pitted earlier, or the leaders actually, on mediums. And so, with 1 lap to go, I had a genuine chance maybe of getting a race win here. And looking into the hairpin, I mean, it could have been on there. It would have been a risky one. So I thought, you know what, let's play it safe and wait for the better opportunity here into 130R. He just defended fully to the left-hand side. Got a face full of rear wing, and I don't get a good line through the corner, and that puts me a little bit too far away and on the back foot against the McLaren behind, and so we have to cover it off. And it's going to be ultimately a 3rd place, which, to be honest, after that mistake into turn 1 where I went for an overzealous move, I think that cost me. That could have been a race win, and that could have been 312 points on the board. Would have been my best score. Instead, we have to settle for 286. And when I say settle, I mean I didn't settle at all. I went in again, and unfortunately, this lobby was ranked a lot lower. and so a first place was only worth 251 points. And this was because, after setting pole position, this was because I ruined my driver rating and my sportsmanship rating by doing some daily races in between, and so I was in a much lower level lobby. I won that race. It was quite a boring one, to be honest. Not too much happening. Got pole position, fastest lap, clean race, and the win. But as we mentioned, it was only worth 251. So, we go again. In the very last race of the season, the 10 o'clock slot of round 6. One last chance to get it right. We've had 2 opportunities. The first one went really well, I think, with, ruining the mistakes. Second one went really well, but it just wasn't worth enough points. So, we have to get this one right. We only have one more chance, and I can assure you that this was a brilliant race. For those of you who watched it during the live stream, I'm hoping you'd agree. Let's take a look at the qualifying. 6 hundredths of a second up on the pole lap, and we're looking good here. In fact, this lobby seemed to be worth a decent amount of points, and definitely was worth more than the 251 that I was just in. So that was a positive. We had a chance here of securing some good points. 3/10 up here as we head into the hairpin, which, as you'll see throughout the course of this video, was very much my weakness on this track, and I think was a weakness of the AMG in general through the season. The slower corners really being its Achilles heel, so you're having to really work the car a lot to get it to turn through the slow corners. Into the chicane at the end of this first qualifying lap. Actually, my second qualifying lap, sorry. My first one was a high 59, but I know I can go a lot quicker than that. Coming up to the line is a 59.4, big improvement. But this lobby was incredibly close. Look at that, I was in 7th on the grid, 3/10 away from pole position, and actually that turned into 8th. Let's try and move forward, have a good race here. Starting on the mediums, we'll go over to the softs on like lap 12, I think. Yes, let's jump in. The strategy, as before, start on the mediums, start on the worst tyre, get that out of the way, and then you can finish strong on the soft. And you kind of always play it long, basically. So we begin in 8th. Not ideal. There's a lot of cars to fight through here, and in a lobby which is worth a lot more points, I felt like by this point, normally by the third time slot, most people have done the race twice already, and we're much more rehearsed and practiced, and you could argue it's harder therefore to get a good score. But we're going to do our best. As the McLaren ahead through Dunlop corner, it's a little bit wide, and it's a very easy corner to do that on, as you're turning on the exit quite a lot. Through Degner 1 into Degner 2, just really trying to settle into this race, and we've got the cars behind. Very, very close indeed. So you can't really afford to make many mistakes in a race like this. You have to remain firmly on the front foot at all times. Through the hairpin, the car really not wanting to go through there too well. I would say immediately on the back foot, with the McLaren and the Ferrari in very close attendance behind. Now the McLaren in front and the GTR in front, both going incredibly wide. Not really close enough to capitalise. They're both going to have somewhat dirty tyres coming through here. But we're going to have to wait a couple more laps before the first opening presents itself. Because coming down the main straight, as you can see, I was close to the McLaren, but just not really close enough. The slipstream at the moment on the game is quite weak, I would say, and then dirty air is quite strong. So it is a little bit harder as of late to follow another car closely. So you do have to be very mindful of that. Often you have to have a big tyre advantage to really capitalise. This is lap 4, and this is where we're going to have our first mistake from another driver. So the Ukrainian in the GTR here just really losing control quite easily, despite actually having traction control on. And in a vanishing act, just disappears completely. Oh, it's nice to get a free one. Yes, we'll quite happily take that one. As in a race which is as close as this, you often have to put a lot of effort in and a lot of, use your tyres quite a lot, use a lot of fuel in order to really push past someone. And so if you get one for free with zero effort, that's always very helpful. I was about to get another one here, with the McLaren making a mistake, a really small mistake, mind you, on the exit of the chicane, and not opting to defend to the right-hand side. So we're going to move on to the right-hand side, the inside. It then turned into a drag race between the two of us. I had a bit of an overlap here. Not much of one, but enough that the McLaren backed out and surrendered the position. So we're up into 6th. So 2 positions in the first 4 laps, 4 and a bit laps, is not such a bad return. As you can see, 2nd, 3rd and 4th are very close contention, and the gap to 5th, 1.3 seconds. You can see they're just fighting there through the S's, and I'm always licking my lips when I see 3 cars very close like that, because unless they're working together, which they're normally not, they're probably going to be losing time defending and fighting. And so you can see that we gained about 3/10 just through that sequence alone. We're about to gain a lot more. I felt super confident into this final chicane. As you can see, just late on the brakes, really carrying good speed in and getting a good exit. The car felt just really stable and really drivable through there. And so we're closed up very quickly over the course of that 1 lap onto the back of this group. And interestingly enough, we've got another Mercedes here with exactly the same livery. As they go side by side, we're looking to possibly become the lead Mercedes in the race, which would be great as we're trying to get as many points in the championship. Now here there was perhaps space to try and fight my way past, but I was so conscious of not putting myself in the wrong position. Sometimes if you try and put yourself on the outside and go around the outside, you can get run wide and you can end up losing a position rather than gaining one. So I was quite happy just to remain in P6 for the time being, albeit with a massive moment there. As you can see, the relief upon my face as I managed to keep that one just about under control with the brilliance of the SimMagic Direct Drive system. Into the final chicane, lap 6 now. I sense that I'm putting the pressure on this other Mercedes, who started up in 4th and makes a huge error there and loses all sort of drive on the exit. And I make the right decision to go to the left and the outside, get the run and move through to 5th and become the lead Mercedes in the race. So this group has very much opened up. As you see, the GTR, the 2 BMWs in front with a bit of space to breathe. And now we're just going to try and pull away from this Mercedes. I sensed that I was quicker. He obviously did a better job in qualifying by a 10th or 2. I felt like my race pace, I had maybe 2/10 on him per lap roughly over the first 6 laps here, just closing up the gap, going past him. So I wasn't too worried about him fighting back. My main concern was trying to move forward and catch up with the BMWs in front as the leader goes into the pit lane with that soft then to medium strategy. Exit of the final corner, lap number 8 now. The Mercedes behind pushing perhaps a little bit too hard and receiving a penalty. And you can see on the map just how close the grid is. Really, really competitive race, this one, which was really good to see. And I was happy to be towards the front of the train, as we are now onto the back of the first of the 2 BMWs. The top 2, incidentally, quite a long way in front. Well, the de facto leader is actually now down outside the top 8 after pitting. But I'm effectively 5th right now, if we account for everything. But we have a very good chance of overtaking here. The slipstream pretty strong. Now this guy doesn't really defend fully or well, I would say. I think that's fair to say. Just kind of half defended, moved to the middle of the circuit and just left me the entire right hand side. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to hang around, I'm just going to take the opportunity. Gap to the next BMW, 2.5, 2.6 seconds. And so that's, you know, that's a sizable margin. It's certainly not to be scoffed at, even in a long race. Through here, just before we're about to go into the pit lane, just makes a bit of an error on the second part of Spoon Corner. Loses about a second in one go. So crucial error from him there. So far we've had pretty much an error-free race. So that's a nice moment for us. As we exit the final corner, you see a Ferrari go into the pit lane, and this is something we have to be very concerned about, which is the undercut. Some cars going into the pit lane a few laps early. And I decided at the start of the race I said I'll come in at the end of lap 12, but I thought I want to protect against that undercut. I'm going to come in instead at the end of 11 and try to keep track position. And this turned out to be a really good decision, because as you'll see in a moment as we exit the pit lane, this was a really, really close moment from the Ferrari, which pitted early, and I just park it on the apex on turn 1 and turn 2 to remain ahead by the faintest of margins, super close. And you know, if I was even half a second slower on that in lap, I would probably be in 8th, maybe 9th right now. So that worked out exactly as I had hoped, just remaining in front of the undercutting drivers. We still now have a chance to undercut the BMW, which was in front of us, as they are presumably going to come in at the end of this lap or the end of the next one. So there is a chance to jump him in the pit lane. So this lap needs to be good. We had a slow turn 1 and turn 2, having to go narrow and defend. But now that the lap is a bit more established, we can just take the normal racing line and try to put down a good marker here on the fresh, soft tyres. Lovely to have soft tyres bolted on with a bit more grip. As I say that, I go a little bit wide on the exit, but not losing too much time. So the BMW in front goes into the pit lane. Let's wind this forward. And this is going to be a really, really close moment between the two of us. As we head into turn 1, side by side, I try it around the outside. It doesn't quite work. I back out as the BMW keeps the position. And I mean, that could not have been much closer. If I was about 2/10 faster, I would have got it around the outside. I didn't do enough. We have to settle for the position for the time being. I am in 5th, fighting for 4th. But this is effectively 3rd because Motor Insider, the other Mercedes, has not yet pitted, and so we should gain a position from that. But that was super close. I got it right against the Ferrari the lap before, against the BMW here, just about behind. But we've got another 6 or 7 laps here to try to fight forward. You can see the BMW actually had a really good couple of laps here, just pulling clear. But I knew that it wasn't game over. We had a lot of laps left, and you know, still more than 10 minutes of racing to reel him back in and go for the overtake. So it took a couple of laps here for the race to settle back down after all of the interchanges during the pit stop phase. But we're looking good here in 4th, now that Motor Insider has pitted. Looking at 3rd. This is the end of lap 16. So it took a couple of laps there, as I said. And I just began to pull onto the back of Ghosted here once again, as I think his tyres were beginning to go off a little bit. And I think the tyre wear on this Mercedes was pretty good actually on this circuit. As I begin to pull away from Treviso, he pitted 2 laps earlier than I did, which I think was quite early. And so he's going to be feeling tyre wear earlier than I am. So I'm in a pretty good position here in terms of actual position, and then my tyres as well, in a car that feels good around this track. So we've got a really good opportunity here out of the final corner, heading towards turn 1. Can we get the move done? Can we get him out of position? He moves fully to the right hand side, sets out his stall in very much a defensive position. I try to open up that inside. We have to go to the outside and maybe sneak up the inside towards turn 2. Doesn't quite work. Super close though. But you know, he had a good defense, and it couldn't quite open up the gap and make it happen. So we're going to have to try something a bit different. I was really conscious at this point of, if we fight too much, we're inviting a lot of cars behind back into the fight, because we had pulled away from the Ferrari, but now the Ferrari behind of Treviso is back on me. And this is where I really kind of began to sort out my hairpin, get the rotation a lot better, get off the brakes a tiny bit earlier to let the car roll. And the result being, we are right on the tail of this guy, underneath the rear wing, bumping him along the circuit towards Spoon. And I was just hoping he wouldn't go defensive, as he didn't need to, and lose us both time and push us back into the pack. I get a better exit here, and this is where I'm going to be super aggressive, as we get a good slipstream. Now 130R is quite a scary place, and especially if you're going in there side by side. But I thought, I've got the run, I'm going to do it. We go through. I think we leave each other enough space just about, but there's not much room to go side by side through there. He goes off the track, comes back on, side by side into the chicane. I think about it around the outside, but we're not going to put ourselves in a bad position, and so we're going to wait for the time being. We're going to have another opportunity here though, as the BMW seem really weak off the chicane. Heading down the main straight, this time he just sets out his stall fully to the right hand side. There's not much I can do, especially with the Ferrari immediately behind. I'm going to try it around the outside. There's a bit of contact with the apex of turn 1, and I'm going to have to concede the position and almost concede through turn 2. And I'm going to have to fire it into turn 3 with a lot of apex speed to just about remain in front of the Ferrari. I had to be super aggressive there, and I think I did just about enough to keep the position, even though the Ferrari was half a car length ahead on my right hand side. So that kind of shows you, as I said, you try and go for a position. If you don't get it, sometimes you can lose one, and that almost happened there. So we're in danger here of perhaps even losing 2 positions with the Lamborghini there in 6th place. Very, very close indeed. We're going to have to regather ourselves here and go again for another assault with only 2.5 laps remaining. We're running out of laps here to try to get this podium, which would be a fantastic result and would be worth 299 points, which would beat the 286 I would have scored if I had kept the result from race 1. So coming around into Spoon, only twice more through here after this one, and this is where you can see the BMW really struggling. I think its front tyres were beginning to go off quite significantly, and on a long double corner like that, you really do feel it. You know, there's a lot of long corners here at Suzuka with lots of direction changes. You need your front tyres to be working, and at this point the BMW doesn't quite have that happening for him. Right on the curb on the exit of 130R into the chicane. As I said, always good through here, taking the curb nicely through the first apex and able to square off the corner to get a better exit. And this is where it's going to happen. I tried this exact move a couple of laps ago and didn't quite work. Well, we're going to adapt it slightly to try to keep him to the right hand side a bit later by having this little shimmy to the right hand side there. He goes in far too hot and narrow, opens up the space, and through the second apex he's got no chance. He keeps his foot in and drives himself off the track and actually loses a position to the Lamborghini and drops down into 5th place. And this is the beginning of the unravelling for him, unfortunately, as he gets kind of tapped many times by the Ferrari through this set of corners, and they both end up losing a lot of time, as you can probably see already. And I was quite surprised, I must say, that he tried to keep the position around the outside. I think this race showed that sometimes you just got to back out at the right moment. I backed out many times during this race just to play the long game and keep the position and just wait for a better opportunity rather than get run wide onto the grass, which can be catastrophic, as just proven. Into the hairpin for the penultimate time, 19th time out of 20. We now have a Lamborghini very much for company, and TX3 Cal there in 4th has done a really good job because he started 14th on the grid. And so I started 8th, he started 14th. We've both fought through. He's probably done a better job overall because he is 1 position behind me and started 6 positions further back. So we're under threat here. This final lap is not going to be an easy one. I can't relax at all. You know, he's only got half a second margin. Now, a bit further back, we've ghosted again. I mean, these two here, the Ferrari and the BMW, just clearly there's some level of resentment or bitterness, you could say, between the pair of them, because as we head into the chicane, dive bomb of the Millennium comes flying in and he ends up losing position there. As we cross the line to begin lap 20 of 20 in 3rd place, the top 2 are a long way ahead, but I think I've done enough here to perhaps secure a podium. Top 2 was never on. And unfortunately for Ghosted, he's going to go from bad to worse because through turn 1 he gets contact from the Ferrari, not once but twice. So he was 3rd a few laps ago, now in 7th. So really not an ideal ending to the race for him after putting in a solid performance. It really is a horrible feeling to sink like a stone in the last 10% of a race. Conversely, we've moved up into third place, 1 lap to go or less than now. Let's move it forward slightly into the hairpin. We've got to get this one right, of course. The Lamborghini typically good in these rotation corners, but I think I've got good tyre wear, and so I wasn't really under too much pressure. Through Spoon again, another test. We got to get a good exit from this one, as there is a long straight leading to 130R, and then of course the chicane. Now he was 6 tenths behind there, down to 5 tenths behind into 130R, and so I'm always worried about this last lap dive bomb, but thankfully I did just enough to protect my tyres and keep enough of a gap, and to bring home a really brilliant result with a P3. Oh, come on guys, what a result that is. Come on. What a race. Woo. That's as good as I could have got. First and second were gone. I did everything I could. That is one of the best races I've ever had. That was so good. I really enjoyed that. That was a great way to finish the season. We'll see the total points in a minute. In fact, we'll do it right now. As we take a look at the end of the season, we can claim our prize score and take a look at the rankings. 7th overall for AMG and within the top 100 in Europe, Middle East and Africa. Claiming the full 10 million credits. So there it is, 7th place overall for Mercedes, and actually only 30 points away from a 4th. So a pretty good campaign. Likewise, top 100 in Europe, Middle East and Africa, which is the result I was looking for before the race. Now that's the end of the manufacturers, but the Nations Cup has now begun. So I'll see you on track for that one. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.